All right, good evening, everybody. This is our pre-agenda for the meeting for the month of March for the Spencer Board of Aldermen. We are called to order. We have all of our board members present this evening, and we will begin with an invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance. I'll start with the invocation. Father God, we thank you so much for this beautiful weather and the changing of the seasons. We thank you for the opportunity to come together this evening and tomorrow to plan the future of Spencer and to do our strategic planning for this year. We ask that you be with us, be with our leadership, be with our staff as we go through this process. Help to give us discernment, help to give us a vision for the future, and to be able to act on that vision. Amen. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we have a pretty unique meeting this evening. As I mentioned, we are going into our strategic planning session starting this evening with some community input, and then that'll set the stage for our all-day workshop tomorrow that'll be held here with our board and staff, and so we're looking forward to that. But before we get to that, we are going to review our agenda for next Tuesday for our regular meeting for the month of March. And I do need a volunteer to give the invocation next week.
I will.
All right. Thank you, Patty. The Seacrest will give the invocation. We'll then have the Pledge of Allegiance and an opportunity for any additions or deletions to the agenda, an adoption of the agenda. And then we'll get to recognitions. Are there recognitions that we need to make for the month of March from the board? Okay. Yes.
So one item that we'd like to have for staff is Chief Lanning was recognized by the Department of Defense for support of the Employer Supportive Guard and Reserve, and so we'd like for that to be one of the recognitions.
Okay, very good. We will do that. Anything else? Okay. We will then have an opportunity for public comment, and we'll have our consent agenda. Currently, on the consent agenda, we have our approval of minutes from our 2 February meetings, and then we also have an item for consideration of property liens. This, I believe, is you have that as a supplement to your agenda packet, and that would be requested to go on the consent agenda. This is something that is routine that we occasionally have to do when we don't get compliance with our code enforcement. We have to go in and abate the situation. So you can read more about that, but that's proposed to go on the consent agenda. And then if we have anything else that we want to add to the consent agenda tonight as we get through this agenda, please let me know. All right, the next item will be to consider appointing Mason Ivy to the Historic Preservation Commission. And will we have an opportunity to meet the candidate? Okay, very good. So we'll have a chance to meet Mason on Tuesday. And then item number 9 is to consider ordinance 26-01, which would grant a franchise to Duke Energy Carolinas. This is the second reading of this. This is basically readopting a previous agreement that had been in place with Duke Energy. And I believe we have to do that as a point of order for the agreement, correct?
I'm trying to remember. It may have gone on was it on the consent agenda last month?
It was on the agenda,
okay,
but it was not read or anything.
Okay.
Mr. Crapster
That's right.
did make comment. He was here and made comments.
Okay. So I don't know if in terms of whether it can be on the consent agenda or not. I don't know that
that's what I was getting at.
Particularly be an issue, but it does need to be considered twice.
But as a second reading, wouldn't that mean that it would have to actually be heard and couldn't be on consent?
Well, I believe it simply means it has to be on the agenda, right? We have to have an opportunity to actually review it and the public see it. And I'm fine either way. If we want to read it, just that's That's
I think the main part is 2 votes to approve the ordinance,
Right.
in other words. So,
what's the pleasure of the board?
You know, there's some question around about Duke Energy.
Mhm.
I think it's important that we let our citizens know that we are giving, that this is about a renewal of a contract for 60 years.
Yeah.
For them to be able to work on their equipment and their lines and everything that we get with them to serve our community. And this doesn't have anything to do with the other public hearings, but I think
Right.
it might be important to let our
That's a good
people
point.
know that.
Okay.
And I also would like to add that it doesn't affect anybody, any taxpayers or anybody else as
Right.
far as the cost goes. So that's gonna be the biggest question.
Okay.
I think it would probably come to everybody's opinion to, if that's gonna come up.
Yep.
Is it gonna cost? I think that's super important.
Okay. We will keep it on the regular agenda then. And then item 10 is to consider adopting Historic Preservation Commission bylaws amendment. And Kyle, you're going to give an update on that on Tuesday? Okay, all right. And then we'll also consider adopting a budget ordinance amendment, and that is the HVAC for the public library. Typically with these budget amendments, we'll move them to consent agenda, but obviously this is a big ticket item, so I propose that we have this as a regular agenda item. And then the next is to consider accepting a deed of utility easement for 207 West 17th Street. Peter, any input on that this evening?
sure. So this is part of our 17th Street Stormwater project that is being done through a DEQ ARPA funding grant. This is one of the last pieces we need before this project is kind of ready to go. And the town's been working with a property owner along the way that has some property that is needed for some of the infrastructure for the improvements. And so what's provided there is the easement language that the property owner has already agreed to and signed. And there would be a cost of $850 provided for that easement, which is the share of the property being impacted, the calculation based on the property, the land value, and the amount of the property being impacted by the easement. So once this is taken care of, that's another step closer to getting that project underway.
And since this is a individual agreement with a private property owner and for a utility easement, I would propose we just simply put this on the consent agenda. All right, the next is to consider granting an in-kind sponsorship to waive certain town park reservation and permit fees for the Spencer J.C.'s Easter egg hunt, which is scheduled for March 28th, 2026. This essentially amounts to waiving the $100 reservation fee so that they can reserve the town park to hold that community-wide Easter egg hunt on March 28th. And then there's some other permit fees that would subsequently be waived as well. And of course, then that would be considered an in-kind sponsorship to be able to do that. The JCs had reached out to us about hosting that and had also asked about waiving those fees. Again, this is something I would consider putting on the consent agenda item. Everybody good with that?
Mm-hmm.
Pat?
Yeah, I just wonder how we're going to deal with that for future. I mean, for other organizations.
Yeah, and I think the thing here is we recognize that they're putting on a community-wide event, right? And so we do have, and I think that's the key, is we have a certain process by which we typically follow. And, in this case, it's something that they've traditionally done. They've asked to do it instead of at 8th Street. They've asked to do it here in the town park for more visibility. And so because it is essentially an event that a nonprofit in our community, one of the few remaining civic organizations, puts on for the town, I think that was why the request came that way. So I think that was, we have the ability as the board to consider those things. So the question is if we want to talk about this on Tuesday night or add it to the consent agenda. But I think we've got the policies in place and the fee schedule in place that, like, for future events that we can follow, and if we need to consider waiving that or consider something else, they'd have to bring it to the board.
I have no problem with putting it on consent, and I'm certainly in favor of this, but I'm just,
You're-
looking forward.
You're absolutely right, and Peter and I talked about that too. So yeah. Okay, so we'll add that to the consent agenda, and then we will have our departmental reports, and then we'll have our town manager report and requests and comments from the mayor and board. Peter, anything else that we need to consider? I know you will not be here. And so we will have another town manager acting on Tuesday, Anna.
Do I have to give his report?
Well,
So
so
by-
by,
Yeah, you have to make up his.
Well, I'm sure you'll one up him on it. So yeah, go ahead.
one thing, yes, I will not be here, and Chief File will also not be here on Tuesday. If you'd like us to go over those items this evening, we could do that. Otherwise, the information is in the packet.
I say save Anna.
Save
Look at her, she's like.
Well, I guess with the town manager report, is there anything pertinent coming out of that we need to be aware of that if there were questions, Anna wouldn't be able to answer?
The main things that are included in there, I guess the main thing that's kind of a larger item discussed in there is the HHPD grant. I provide an update about a grant that we had applied for a couple of years ago, and we've just now gotten word that grant request was funded, but we still have more questions about that than answers, actually. So there was some discussion about that, and if there's any questions about that, we can talk about it tonight for sure.
I would like to, I mean, you say you have some thoughts about ways that we may be able to combine some other projects.
Yep.
Can we hear about that?
Sure. And again, I don't want us to forget about Chief File too, but while we're thinking about
We'll
this,
get to you.
all right. So and at any point, Joe and Joel, if y'all want to come up and join the discussion, but the main change that we've been exploring, of course, the hazard around the Chicken Springs Dam is that if something were to happen to that, the hazard is really associated with 17th Street being downstream of it, and the hazard to the roadway and those using it. And so we have been working through the notice of deficiency process with DEQ over the last few years, but could really only do so much. There are measures we took to that we could respond to maintenance-wise and water level-wise with the siphon that we have in place, but a more permanent solution to this dam to make it function better so it's not considered a high hazard. That's a big price tag, and that's why we applied for this funding. This round of funding, again, was applied for about 2 years ago, and it was for design. And we asked for a design project that would total $325,000, and in that project, it would evaluate a few different options. One would be just fixing it with an engineered solution. One would be the idea of breaching the dam. One would be somewhere in between where you reduce the amount of water in the pond by making it not a full breach, but you're just not withholding as much water, and you're creating more of a wetland area. And in the discussions we've had so far, we recognize that the amenity of the pond within the forest is important to the community. And we really don't like the idea of just making the pond go away to solve the issue. So another idea that came about is, what would it look like if we not just think about the pond, but the roadway? And what would it look like if the roadway connection where 17th Street crosses at the trail crossing at 17th Street and it becomes Spencer Avenue? At one point in history, those were two separate streets that were not connected, and at some point it changed and the connection happened. And if what we've been asking is if that through traffic connection went away and it became more of a another trailhead parking area, so that there would be bollards put up essentially and signage, so that as you're approaching it, you know the road's ending and that you're entering a parking area. Pedestrians and bicycles could still get through, but it just wouldn't be a through street the way it is. Would that essentially satisfy the hazard concerns? And so those are the questions that we have put forth to DEQ, and their response was that, well, we have to ask FEMA. From a grant standpoint, I think on the other side of DEQ, and y'all remind me if I'm misremembering anything, they haven't fully answered our question about the hazard itself from the dam safety side of things. But those are the things we want to explore, and so we're our consultants at Hazen are working through a revised scope that we would want DEQ and FEMA to entertain about. Could we basically drop off the breach to the dam idea from an alternative, add this other alternative in to the program? But then the other big challenge with this is I mentioned a project of $325,000. The grant only covers 65%, so you're left with the 35% cost share, which in this case is about $113,000. So that's the other piece of it, is that to go forward with the project, which really is just design, that's the local costs that we will have to identify. And then, of course, the outcome of that will be a much more expensive project. But what we believe to be true is that this other alternative will likely be a much less expensive project than the full-blown dam rehab project would be. So if I've missed anything, y'all come up and add in. But that's kind of the lay of the land so far.
The one question you might be thinking could potentially be answered by the fire chief was, does cutting off the road create any kind of a response time scenario? And the answer is no, because there are other ways to get to that part of town, as opposed to going through there. So that was one of the things we talked about. And, I think there are other funding sources that might respond well to a recreation-based use of that area. That's all I know.
Was any of this ARPA money?
I don't think this pot was ARPA money. No, this is FEMA. This is a FEMA grant that the state gets on an annual basis, and they try to identify projects to submit to use that FEMA dollars. Okay. And part of the challenge with this, of course, has been this 2-year wait on the word, which apparently had to do with, you'll recall the last year or so, we were in the midst of a 2-county hazard mitigation plan update. And apparently that process was part of until that was all completed, it seemed like FEMA was having a challenge with identifying the ability to consider these, I don't know how many other projects, but at least this project seemed to be held up by that.
May I ask a question? Is the dam okay if we do what you're talking about? If water builds up on that thing, will the dam hold as far as that goes?
So there are deficiencies with it. I think storm events of a certain type will cause water to go in a way we wouldn't want it to. But the issue is if it is not a place that traffic would be going through on a regular basis, there are measures we could take to, close off that area in advance of a storm event. Say, this is going to be closed. But the other part is it wouldn't just be closing the road. We would need to still make some level of improvements to the dam facility, but perhaps not to the extent that we would if the road were still there.
That's what I was going to say. It'd be a lot cheaper
But
If we
is
get
there
off the,
actually a spillway with that dam?
sir,
Yes.
Is there actually a spillway for that dam?
there is, but it's more like a natural spillway.
Yeah,
There's not
that's what I
a
thought.
true made, engineered spillway, and that's what would have to be done
Yeah.
to keep the pond, which I'm pretty sure Mr. Stanback's adamant that we want to keep the pond. So, yeah, it would just take us off the high hazard list is what we're looking,
Yeah,
and
I
then
understand that.
then
It's
it would
still
be a
gonna be a
lot cheaper to
liability
do
no
the
matter
corrections
what.
to the pond.
Yeah, so basically, if it stays on the high hazard list, it's a much higher threshold of things that we would have to do to the dam.
Yeah.
But dam stabilization would still have to happen. I mean,
Oh,
there are
yeah.
areas that need to be repaired. Now, the other issue is we have the siphon, and the siphon can always remain there in the event
Yeah.
to be able to draw it down in advance of big storm events.
I understand.
But yeah, I mean, it will continue to be a risk, as
Yeah, it's a
any
lot
dam is a
no matter
risk.
what.
Right.
So, and I know what you're getting at. It's like, well, shouldn't we just fix the issue? I think what you're looking at though is cost would probably be about 3 times as much, just off the cuff, 3 times as much as what this other solution would probably be.
There'd be a lot less water in the pond as well at the high hazard level compared to a normal level, just because of the holdback.
Well, let me ask you another question. I'll ask it, and I'll ask this to Joe. The people living there at the dam, has that ever been resolved? That lady?
No, we did go to the extent of having an appraisal of the property last year, and it was considerable. The real estate value was much lower than what they were asking, and so we provided the information to them, and sort of following a statutory formula that we're only allowed to pay more than 10% more than the appraised value.
Right.
And we shared that information with them, and fundamentally they did not respond to our offer.
I just wondered, because, you're talking about if we do this, you'd have to have some property somehow or another, or to develop a parking lot or something like that. If that would be available or not, that property would be available or not.
Well, I think the other issue is if there are repairs to the dam that have to be made, they're going to be liable for some of those costs
I know, I
because
understand
some
that.
of it's on their property, and we've shared that with them. I don't know that that's fully registered with them
That's
as
what I
well.
was saying. I don't think they understand completely.
Yeah, I mean, and I will say, this is obviously a last resort for any municipality, but there are ways to go about forcing that process, especially in the interest of safety when it comes to.
But we are communicating with them, I guess, on a regular basis or something.
Not on a regular
Not
basis.
Well, not regular, but we are communicating.
It's been a while since
Yeah, and I
I've
think
checked in with
we
them.
need to discuss that. I mean, just bring it up every once in a while.
Mhm.
I know it's her and her son, is that right?
Yeah, the Wolfers, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And we did actually ask about, while we were talking with the DEQ folks about the grant, about the idea of could the scope of the grant actually include property acquisition, but they did get an answer on that from FEMA, which was no. Just the way the FEMA grant guidelines are set up, it's not an eligible activity.
But the reality is, even if it were, we still could only pay up to 10% over the value, and that's not something that they're interested in. So it becomes a non-starter. But to be continued. But it is something we need to move forward, and I think the key is we need to find a way to find the funding for the match to be able to advance the design on this, because that's one step closer to being able to actually do something to solve the problem.
It's not good to put things off, keep putting things on, especially something like that.
Yeah.
And then sometime in the future, we have a major break, and then we're going to look like we got egg in our face.
Right.
That's something I think we should consider in the future.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right, Chief Powell, you can give your report.
Good evening.
I'll certainly try to keep this very short. I know we have a lot more pressing issues. The monthly code enforcement report, the only thing really to note on there, we went back and added a door hanger tab. So, we briefly talked about how Preston handles his initial notifications. So anything that will be marked this month, there was 15 noted in door hanger status, which means that is in that 7-day grace period where we've notified the individual that there is a violation and that they have those 7 days to correct it before we go to a formal notice of violation where we actually begin the countdown towards abatement. So that's really the only kind of oddity for this month's report. You'll see that from here on out. And then obviously we already briefly spoke about the 2 liens that need to be confirmed this month. So, some of you have probably on the board have never had to do that before. It's not something we typically have to do, but in that situation, it's a house that's already in foreclosure. The process is going through, and it was some outstanding bills that we have yet to collect. And I believe there's 2 additional ones that were confirmed some time ago, likely when James was still your code enforcement officers. But if you have any questions about the code report, I'll try to answer those.
I noticed that I don't know the address, but there had been a house on maybe 2 streets back down that way.
Mm-hmm.
That the whole front end of it was covered in vines or something, and that looks like that's been cleaned up. Is the person still there?
Yeah, that was actually a child of the owner, the original owner. So that was one of our top 10 target ones before because it had been dilapidated for a number of years and overgrown. But I believe, kind of speaking, I think the mother in the situation had been moved to a facility or whatever and has passed away, so the son's trying to fix the house back up while he lives elsewhere. But I think his intent is to actually move back to the house as a primary residence. He's definitely been putting some work into it.
Significant change.
Definitely. All righty. PD report. I will try to answer any questions you may have on that.
You didn't have as many park checks. Is that because of the snow?
Probably staffing issues, which I'm sure we'll talk about here shortly. But
okay.
we're pretty we're down on staffing right now, pretty low. Yeah, definitely the overall numbers are significantly down. You see, we're at 1,879 events. That's significantly lower than what our typical would be.
Right.
But yeah, we're running pretty thin right now.
All right. Any other questions?
Great. Thank you.
Enjoy your time off. All right. So, board, that is the agenda for next Tuesday. And with that, what are next steps for moving into our planning?
Sure.
session?
So I believe we had published about an estimated time of 6:20.
Okay.
So we may want to take a recess until 6:20
Okay.
to make sure that if anybody was planning on joining us, they would have the ability to do so.
Sounds good. All right, board, we'll be recessed until 6:20.
Okay.
Atlantic City is bringing his own.
I'm-
We are gonna start back. It's 6:20. And we have our boardroom full of the public. Welcome, Stan. Thanks for joining us. So we have an opportunity this evening to hear from staff and review some feedback from a survey that we were able to provide some input on, really regarding our community priorities. Kind of a review of the things that are our priorities over the last year, and then have an opportunity for some engagement and get some feedback on the survey that each of you as board members had a chance to complete this evening. And then really what we'll then focus on is really kind of getting some preliminary information to focus our efforts for tomorrow, and really hone in on the things that we're going to be talking about tomorrow. And so we will wrap up this evening with a preview of our agenda for tomorrow. Have a pretty packed agenda, but kind of hear lots of exciting things, I think, from our staff and from some guest speakers that we have. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Peter and let you kick us off.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor and members of the board, and to our staff, and to Mr. Gobble for joining us this evening. We appreciate you coming and joining in, because we want this to be a dialogue with the community. And yes, so the things we're going to accomplish over the next hour or so will include taking a look at our current year priorities, and then again looking at some results of the pre-survey exercise that y'all did. But before I get into all that, I just want to start with a word of thanks, because this represents a lot of teamwork to get to the point of being ready for this, and so appreciate all of our staff doing their part to make it possible, and for everybody's time involved in today and tomorrow. We will tomorrow have Kasha Thompson with Centralina with us as a facilitator, and she will help keep things moving along, and she's got some great activities planned for the end of the day portion to really synthesize everything. And so I'm looking forward to our time together, and again, appreciate the opportunity. Dustin, thank you. We're going to be getting to this in a little bit, so thank you for getting that queued up. We'll get to that shortly. What I'd like everyone to call your attention to first is our key priority list. And of course, we have 5 main focus areas that have been consistent over the last several years. One being infrastructure, facilities, and properties, community planning and development, public safety, community outreach and involvement, and staff excellence. These are the main core focus areas that we've been working on specific strategies over the last several years, and each of those areas have below them some bullets that really were developed at this process last year, and that's what helped us in putting the budget together. So that's the idea, is to take stock of where we are, and then over the next day look forward to put together a refreshed set of priorities as we're looking in the short term for the budget development, but of course long term into the future. And so what I'm going to ask our staff to do as we go through these is to share. They have submitted, which you'll see on each page. The next page focuses on infrastructure, facilities, and properties. And so our staff has contributed updates in with these, and we're not going to read them verbatim, but the ask is for our staff to come to the microphone at the lectern and share highlights of what's occurred this year based on these priorities. And from the looks of it, Joel is up first.
I think the order got rearranged. No, I'm just speaking. Good evening, Mayor, members of the board.
Good evening.
So the tangible improvements of maintenance and infrastructure, some of the projects going on, some that have been completed. So 17th Street is in the process. The bidding process will be started on that soon. And we will see how far the grant we have at this time will go, and then we'll put out in go for another grant to finish the phase 2 of the project. So that one's still ongoing. The Chicken Springs Dam, we just had a big update on it. You know, we're kind of where we stand with the grant on it. So that's where we are. CCAP has finally been completed. The stormwater repairs, we had 2 within the last while, both of those being on 2nd Street, you know, the large one at the park, and then we had another one further down at Whitehead that was completed earlier this year. And then the stormwater planning grant, we're in the final stages of it. All the shape files have been sent to iWork, which is a system that we're already using to get us maps, GIS maps, and all the data into that map so we can do inspections. When we do repairs, any of that kind of stuff, we can update this map, and then it gives us a way to keep track of it. And then the street paving, which is in the process right now, we've identified a lot of areas in town to do more of the like patches, that kind of stuff, to spread it more across town instead of doing just one big street. So paving is expensive, you know, and so if we can maximize that and kind of spread it across town and do some of the worst areas, we've identified a big list. So we've got to go back and narrow those down just a little bit because for that. But that's where we are on those. So do you have any questions? No?
Let me ask you a question real fast.
Yes, sir.
These streets, these potholes or these big old sinkholes, you're gonna go in and patch them, but are you gonna go in and compact them as far as that goes?
As far as the street paving,
Yeah.
yes, yeah, they'll be patched, and then they'll be, you know, probably more than less they'll mill the top off, and then they'll patch the actual deep holes, and then they'll pave over top of them.
Yeah, because we've got a problem with compaction on a lot of holes that needs to be compacted
Exactly.
before we do any.
Yeah, it's almost like we need to go in and actually take out some of the base aggregate, refill that, compact it,
And then put it.
yeah.
You
We've
know,
got a
just
lot
to
of
make sure
aprons.
there's no leaks or anything like that.
Well, a lot of the patches, what happens if we're just patching them and not really working on the sub base, then they end up breaking up the next time we get cold weather. So.
And most of the areas that they do that, they'll dig down below the base. They'll put binder course in the bottom instead of using gravel, and then they'll build it back up from there.
Yeah.
That's good. That's
Gives a
really
little
the
bit
way
better.
to
A
do
lot
it.
of the aprons on Salisbury Avenue are that way. If you've noticed, 1st, 2nd Street, there's several others. Those are on the list. We've got one at the park that's on the list. So there's areas kind of all over. Intersections are where we're kind of concentrating right now. There are some smaller areas, but those are the big spots.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, yes, sir. You're welcome.
All right.
And Joe's coming up next, and Anna may want to chime in on some of this as well. She's got a microphone too.
Sure. We do have time set aside tomorrow, right after lunch, where the chairman of the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board, Bob Pendergrass, will be here. And we have prepared a fairly robust PowerPoint to go through many of these items that are mentioned, but I will just sort of summarize by saying the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board was formed by ordinance this year. The Board of Aldermen established bylaws for that board, and one of the key requirements of the board is to provide to the Board of Aldermen each year a report and for the year and a work plan for the following year. So that document, I think, is in your packets for tomorrow, but Chairman Pendergrass will be available to address more specifically some of those things. Just as an element that I don't know that we've had a conversation about at the board level yet, is one of the recommendations that's coming from the Parks and Rec Advisory Board is to create a memorandum of understanding with the Cal Ripken League for the use of the 8th Street Ballpark. Fundamentally, the league is operating there and using the facilities, but there are also other community groups that are using the facility. a private school and a youth football league. And the board would be the first to say that's what the park's for, is for people to use it. But there aren't any written agreements that define the roles and responsibility. So that will be something that will be kind of introduced tomorrow to the board, and will hopefully foment further discussion with the town manager and the town attorney as to what that agreement might look like. The board has drafted an agreement and amended it even as late as yesterday. And so that's going to be sort of a new thing that we'll be talking about. Many of the other things are included in our Parks and Recreation Comprehensive Plan that you're well familiar with, the Creating Outdoor Recreation Economy Plan, the numerous grant projects. We have 3 grant projects that we'll be implementing this year for Great Trails State Grant Program, the Connecting Communities to State Trails, which is a Grants Creek Blueway, and then the adaptive reuse of the Carter House for the Sandback Forest Center, which is a part of grant. All of that we'll be doing with oversight from the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board and, of course, Board of Alderman next year. So that's sort of a summary. I don't have anything specific about the library. Is there anything to add? Or?
I don't think so, because we talked about the HVAC, right? That's the biggest thing.
I'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
All right. Thanks,
Thank
Sheriff.
you.
All right, we'll turn to community planning and development.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. You have in your package the numbers updated as of this year as far as the issuance of zoning permits, subdivisions, rezonings, things of that nature that give you an indication that we continue to grow. In my mind, we continue to prosper. Tomorrow I'll be making a presentation to you concerning something I've been preaching since I got here in 2022. So this will be my 5th time telling this same story to you again. But community development equals economic development. And that's what I'll be talking about tomorrow. You understand that clearly. You supported us in our efforts to grow this community and make it a better place to live and work. What we sometimes forget is that they don't go hand in hand all the time. Sometimes you invest in the community development for a long, long time, or what seems like a long, long time, before you get the benefits of the economic development. And every year at budget time, Peter and Heather come to me and say, when are we going to get some of the tax revenue that this development and growth is supposed to be bringing us? And all I can say is soon. It'll get here soon.
Hey, good.
It's all relative.
They're going to get tired of hearing that after a while. But 5 years really isn't that long in the life of the city. And we have come a long way in those 5 years. You have done some great things. We continue to see growth pressures. We continue to receive applications for rezonings, for subdivisions, for annexations. We'll be bringing you those in the coming months that are sitting on my table right now. We continue to see interest in industrial growth, and that's the part that will really bring the cash register and bring us some benefits economically and help take some of the pressure off of you as far as accomplishing the projects that you want to accomplish. They're not quite here yet, but we continue to see them being active, and that's certainly a whole lot better than nobody knocking on the door or ringing the telephone. So with that, I will answer any questions you have and then save my time for tomorrow.
I will tell you that there is active work being done at the truck stop
There is.
today.
I went out today and looked because I've had numerous people tell me that. So that project got slowed down for a number of reasons. The latest that we've seen is that DOT required a traffic impact statement to be done, and the assessment came back showing what we already knew, that it was going to put a lot of stress on Long Ferry Road. They have required, I saw the letter yesterday from DOT spelling out what they're requiring as far as turn lanes and intersection improvements and things of that nature. So that was just one of the problems they ran into, finding out what DOT was going to require. The routing of the sewer was something they were depending on another development to take care of part of it for them, and that development slowed down at the wrong time. And then some power lines that went across the property were hanging too low for the large trucks that will be coming and going. Duke Energy had to move those lines over to the side of the property to make it available. But you're absolutely right. There are equipment and people on the job site as of today picking up things and moving them forward. Be glad to answer any other questions. Going once, going twice.
Thanks, Steve.
And before Kyle starts, you can get up, Kyle, but I'll mention there is a tool you'll see on the back pages as we flip along, and that's really designed to help you just kind of capture thoughts over the next day as we go through various topics. Maybe these are some questions to have in mind as you're hearing about things. So nothing super formal there, but it's just a little tool we want to incorporate in.
All right. Good evening.
Good
Good
evening.
evening.
So I have the opportunity tomorrow to work with y'all to update your annual strategy on housing, specifically affordable housing. Before I mention anything, I do want to let y'all know, some of you may be aware, Peter and I were recently at a 2-day conference in Chapel Hill as part of our State, Our Homes program, where we are trying to learn from our peers across the state on some strategies, some innovative and creative strategies that we may be able to employ locally to try to meaningfully address the housing crisis when it comes to housing affordability. When I think about what the town could do in the area of affordable housing, I can see a lot of long-term potential for some really creative work, and I'll talk to you more about that in my main presentation tomorrow. But I think we do also have to be realistic about our current funding reality. And as you know, we were not successful when we applied for our 2026 CDBG grant application. So at least for the next year, I think our strategy has to kind of be right fit for the current capacity and funding constraints that we have, while remaining optimistic and open to future funding opportunities in the future. So in that spirit, what I'm recommending is for this upcoming year, for our affordable housing strategy, to kind of shift and down gear just a little bit in terms of our strategy. Obviously, we don't have $1 million to work with like we've had in the past. So what I'm recommending is that we instead shift to focusing on some low-cost or no-cost strategies to strengthen our housing. And there are a number of ways that we can do this, and I'll talk about this more tomorrow. First and foremost, we obviously are using our development ordinance to encourage infill projects. I think one of the elements of the housing crisis is just the availability of housing. And I think Spencer is already pretty forward-thinking when it comes to allowing creative infill and residential development. I know one of our partners in the Our State programs, Ben Fisher with Carroll Fisher Construction, was raving about the fact that Spencer has the RMST district that allows him to do things on one piece of property that if he had the same size property in Salisbury, he wouldn't be able to do what we allow him to do because we have more flexible setback and zoning standards. So we're already hearing that our development ordinance is great for encouraging new housing supply. So I think in the next year, we can consider ways to continue to get the word out that Spencer is sort of a pro-development municipality, and that we have predictable, standardized permit processes that our wonderful planning director is excellent at getting these projects through the pipeline. So I think that's one thing this upcoming year, is that maybe we do more to promote the fact that we are a development-friendly community. Then additionally, as we consider the idea that the town of Spencer no longer has CDBG funds, what can we do to connect our residents to regional funds that are available? So one program that I've mentioned in passing before is the Urgent Repair Program, which is a countywide program that anyone in Spencer is eligible for. Now, I am aware that the city of Salisbury next year is planning on implementing their own local version of IRP, which theoretically means that the countywide funding that's available there may be more opportunity for Spencer residents to get access to those, because properties in Salisbury now have access to another pot of funds to utilize, whereas they would have previously pulled from the countywide. So I think next year we have an opportunity to educate our citizens on the availability of funding, which they would, theoretically, they'll have more chances of getting approved for this upcoming year. And I think that's just an example of the type of strategy that we're looking at implementing, is just letting our citizens know what's available to them. And I think in addition to urgent repair, setting up some sort of local sort of resource referral system, where if someone calls town hall, our staff are trained to connect them to external third-party resources much more quickly. I know in my position, I get regular calls from people who I then refer to other resources. So perhaps there's an opportunity for us to streamline that process here. And then the only other thing I want to mention is I am going to encourage in the next year that we remain ready to apply for additional grants. So we want to maintain that grant ready posture. And I've said we need to be more like Joe, which is basically always being on the lookout for possible funds, and then maybe being a little bit more creative and affirmative to apply for funds that we could then connect to housing. So that's a preview of the things I'm going to talk to you tomorrow, but I think the headline is I'm proposing that we replace our current verbiage around our housing strategy. I'll talk to you, because right now we only have one short sentence in our plan, and it just says, focus on affordable housing, CDBG program, to meet the demand for today and tomorrow. Well, we definitely need to take out CDBG since that's no longer available. And I thought this would be a good opportunity to be a little bit more clear with our citizens about what exactly the strategy that we're looking for. So I'm proposing that we rename that goal as follows. Our new goal would be to strengthen Spencer's aging housing stock through low-cost reinvestment initiatives, connecting residents to regional resources, enhancing strategic partnerships, and maintaining grant readiness to leverage future funding opportunities. And the reason I just want to be more clear about that in our goal is that so we're all oriented around the same thing instead of having a more vague goal, which we've had in the past. So you'll hear plenty more from me tomorrow. I actually have 2 presentations. So, but if you have any questions for me now, I'll be happy to answer.
Any questions?
Could there be something developed like a flow chart for referrals? You know, like an actual sheet that says if you need this, then this might work. Or, I mean, I recognize the fact that you have that information, but
right.
Would that be something that could be developed?
Yes,
that could be
certainly, and actually that's just the kind of low to no cost strategy that I'm recommending for the next year.
All right, thanks, Kyle.
Thank you.
All right, so next is community public safety, and the idea of integrating proactive public safety approaches has been the theme, with 2 key areas on planning for growth and maintaining the ability to deliver proactive services, and also making enhancements to staffing, technology, facilities, and equipment. And of course, those are both budget items, right? When we talk about that with our public safety departments, because they're our largest departments in terms of numbers of staff, and just like many other municipalities, our public safety budget represents over half of our overall town budget. So certainly a key priority of the town, and invite our chiefs to share their updates with us.
Good evening again.
Good evening.
Certainly, I want to kind of look back a few years very briefly, especially for our newcomers on the board. You know, this has been a long-standing as far as for the police department. You know, 4 or 5 years ago, our staffing level was basically 0. So we have slowly recouped and rebuilt the agency. It has definitely been trying to maintain our staffing level. I think you may have noticed this month there was no ACE team report. because ACE team is effectively gone for right now because our staffing is such that we don't have any staff for it. So currently, just kind of a very brief update, we've got 4 openings, 1 frozen position and 1 in training. So effectively, we're 6 people down right now, which is pretty substantial for an agency our size. I probably won't go into a whole lot more tonight, but I've been working with Peter on a public safety career development program that I think may be one avenue to start fixing those issues. It's always been challenging for small agencies to maintain highly qualified staff because big agencies like to swoop in with the almighty dollar and scoop our people up. So we've got some ideas of ways to potentially work on fixing that, rewarding those who stay here, rewarding those who bring a high level of service to the table. So we'll certainly look at that tomorrow. I guess before I jump to the next line, does anybody have any questions about that?
Yeah, for the benefit of the board and the public, who are we losing our officers to?
Well, primarily, most recently, the sheriff's office.
I think that's
we've
an
lost.
important thing that we need to note because I think at some point us political powers that be need to step in and say enough is enough because frankly I'm tired of it.
Yeah, unfortunately, which we'll kind of look at the number we've lost. I don't have it in front of me because it's in my presentation for tomorrow, but I believe we're about 8 individuals in the last 15 months. So that is a substantial burden upon the taxpayer dollars in Spencer because we're putting the money into training highly qualified individuals and then we're losing them to other organizations. So,
and the unfortunate thing is, right, ultimately our citizens are paying for that, right? Because, you know, we have to raise our taxes oftentimes to keep up the pace of pay and then turning around and the county ultimately has to do the same thing. And so, you know, ultimately it's our citizens and tax rates that are getting hit by it. And so at some point we've got to work on some type of agreement. We got to have the right folks in place to sit down at the table and some type of agreement where we're going to stop sniping from each other.
Certainly, that's an age-old issue. I think that's been happening for a number of years. I will say, and I think I've mentioned this before. You know, there's a gentleman's handshake agreement between the small municipalities, but that is between the small municipalities. So all the chiefs and the smaller organizations, Granite Quarry, Landis, China Grove, we all have a gentleman's agreement that we're not actively trying to steal each other's officers because ultimately it costs everybody money. Every time an individual officer moves, it costs you money. And not only that, you lose that sense of community when the officer that everybody knows goes somewhere else, and you have to start back with a fresh person. Regardless if they're a great officer, there is some ability to maintaining the same person for an extended period of time in one organization. So certainly I'll have more comments on that tomorrow.
Thanks.
Is it
You've
just
worked.
about, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say you've worked too hard over the last several years to build the organization to what it is. To have it undermined by others.
Yeah, for the people, for the ones that don't remember what it was like, we didn't have 24-hour coverage. We were having shootings in the middle of the street. The crime level is substantially down, I always try not to preach on crime stats because at any given day, an individual can do something to commit a crime. It doesn't mean the officers haven't worked hard, but the overall crime level is substantially down. One of the safest communities in the county. So.
Is it just because of salaries that they're leaving?
Yeah, well, that's definitely one of them. I will tell you, the 2 most recent that left for over $7,000 a piece. So salaries are part of it, but that's where we're going to talk about the career development program tomorrow, where you can reward officers for the certifications and the abilities that they possess, and I think that will help. It's always good if you give somebody that stair step and ladder where they've got something to work towards. So if you give everybody a target goal and then you sweeten it a little bit with some financial incentives, a lot of times that will that kind of quells the jumpiness when somebody comes to offer you a job at the unknown effectively, because really everyone that leaves is going to the unknown.
Will the results of the election on Tuesday make much difference as far as available personnel?
Probably, I will say there will be a lot of changes over the next 9 months. Certainly, I've been through a sheriff's race myself when I was a deputy, and that is always a that's an interesting time, we'll say that. So every time there's a top change, there's going to be a shakeup across the county. Those people are going to be pulled to the sheriff's office. There are going to be people that are not invited back to the swearing ceremony on December 1st, so there'll be availability of officers. The only kind of negative for the municipalities are the individuals that are leaving the sheriff's office historically are making more money, so they would have to be willing to take a pay cut. Now there again, if we have a career development program that basically honors and incentivizes some of their certifications, it may help level up what our initial offer, but it wouldn't change our target pay rate of what our pay plan structure shows as a target, but it would incentivize them coming in slightly higher, that maybe make it where we would have, some available officers to pick from. So certainly a possibility. All righty, well, I'll jump down. I only had 2 on this list, so it makes it easy for me. I'll jump down to the very last one. This was a very recent one. We were able to, kind of a negative problem. We had some excess funds in our salary line because obviously we're short on staff right now. And we're able to do a budget amendment and go ahead and make a purchase of a vehicle. We've kind of talked about our fleet replacement program and keeping from going back to what we had, where all of a sudden we need every vehicle and the whole entire fleet replaced at one time. We really needed to this budget year was what the replacement program said. And we knew that we were going to have some years in the future where it was going to be stacked up. So, by being able to turn around and get the one, it puts us to where we need 3 vehicles in, July of 26, 1 in July 27, and 5 in July 28. So we still have that bad number of 5 vehicles in a year. We know that's not financially possible, most likely. But again, we'll look at some inventive ideas of how to maybe space out the purchases, budget willing. If we're able to space it out that year where there's only one, make a second purchase that year, which will reduce the other one. So certainly issues that we know are coming. Hopefully revenue will be caught up by July 28 and help soften that blow. And if you remember, that's kind of where we got into that bad situation where we were so far behind and we had to make so many purchases all at once. So unfortunately, even though you have officers that drive varying mileage each day, they're all relatively similar. So the vehicles move up all throughout their mileage and stay relatively similar. We've got one officer, Comer, lives in town. He puts a lot less miles on it. His vehicle was able to be spaced out, so it actually comes due later than all the other ones that were bought in that group. So that was beneficial to us. But as a rule of thumb, everybody else's driving is about the same every month. All righty. Any further questions for me? Thank you.
Sir.
Thank you.
Mayor and Board, how are you this afternoon? So, much like Chief Al, I am well over halfway into being my 6 years fire chief. And although a lot of times I feel frustrations, stresses, aggravations, things that are maybe week to week, day to day, I am very grateful for the support. We've made leaps and bounds since I took over in December of 20. Sometimes internally it doesn't feel that way, but we have. And so want to just express thanks for that and the continued support. I do not have a presentation tomorrow, so I'm going to hit some of this surface level. I just want everyone to be aware information. So our public education program is something we pride ourselves in. For ISO to be 100% in our grading point scale for public education, we have to meet or hand out material to whatever our population is. At Thomas the Train alone, we hit 15,000 people. So we far exceed and surpass the expectation even from the state level, right? And the goal of not just meeting numbers to get a good ISO grade, but to truly make Spencer safer tomorrow than it is today. With that, ISO will be the fall of this year. Two of you, I guess, would be new on the board since our last rating. And so just a brief surface level overview. They're going to come in, they grade us on 5 years worth of documentation, paperwork, from training, apparatus checks, testing of, our ladders, our hose, our equipment, and then look at different metrics, right? How quick are we getting on the road for a call? How quick are we on scene? how many people, how many bodies are we putting on scene, both as ourselves and our supporting mutual aid companies. And all of that comes into a cumulative grade. We missed a class 1 rating by, don't hold me to it, roughly, I think 1.8 points last year. I am very hopeful that we're going to see an improvement this year. With that is, we have done a lot of things, leaps and bounds, making improvements. Some of the unforeseen consequences to adding full-time staff has been that our part-time availability has went almost non-existent, right? Because now we're only covering or budgeting for up to 3 shifts a month, cover Kelly days, a little bit more for vacation. All those things are unknowns. And then you have to rely on that day that one of your part-timers are available to cover that shift. If not, it comes back to a budget standpoint, right? I'm obligated to, after we increase taxes, to make sure I have 3 bodies on our fire trucks to protect our citizens, the business, the property in our town. But it's not cheap. And for the second year in a row, my overtime is already in the negative. It's something that I'm aware of. But I have to do what I have to do to ensure the town's protected, right? And although that is a negative, while also being mindful of the budget. And so going into a capital outlay plan, looking towards the future, staffing is yet again, as much as I hate to be the guy to say, hey, we're going to have to look at this again, to some degree, it's going to have to be a necessity, right? Because we made this huge hurdle. We were very far behind in terms of like-sized municipalities, and we made an adjustment. But if we don't continue to make adjustments, if we don't continue to stay up to where we should be, we're going to fall behind again. And that's the last thing I think anybody in the room wants, while also understanding that revenue is a huge part of that. Again, just some more things at brief. Our public education is great. We have an ATV. We have a ton of public education material that's crammed into a station that we already know we're out of room. In dire need of additional space. And so looking to the future for some funding, that an enclosed trailer would be a perfect, ideal location to put both our ATV and all of our pub ed equipment, materials. And when we go from location to location, we just hook to the trailer, pull it. Now it's out of the walls of the fire station. The last thing just hitting on is, again, last year, this month will be a year that our new engine's been in service. We are a third of the way to the mileage total that we had on a 30-year-old fire truck. Again, a lot of that is call volume. We're 135% higher call volume today than we were 5 years ago. More wear and tear. So I just want us, this is not a, hey, we need to worry about this today, but looking towards the future to understand that although we have a 20-year loan on our current truck, far before that's paid off, we're going to have to start looking back into that process again, so that we, again, don't find ourselves where we were last year with a 30-year-old fire truck that is outdated. Cost of maintenance is astronomical if you can even find the parts. I just don't want us to fall back behind. Any questions?
Let me ask you a question.
Yes,
I
sir.
realize you're running your main fire truck, your new fire truck, to all your activities.
Yes, sir.
You have a backup, don't you, as far as that goes? I know it's not fully prepared or anything like that.
Yeah, so we do. 752, the 2008 Seagrave is our reserve. But we just made $5,000, give or take, worth of repairs to that truck.
Yeah.
On top of knowing that we need to replace the radiator. Because if we drain the radiator right now, it looks like black oil.
Okay.
So, yes, and we could do, and ideally we bounce back and forth, right, to even the load.
Yeah.
But I'm too scared to put that truck in service on the day-to-day because it's not reliable. And we just simply in the budget don't have the $20,000 to $25,000 to replace the radiator.
Yeah, I hate to think that we've got a brand new fire truck and it's 1/3, like you said already.
We sold the 95 E1 with 25,000 miles, and the current truck's already over 9,000.
Now, don't get me wrong, but the bulk of your calls is medical. Is that right?
It's about 60-40, yes, sir.
60-40. Now, it'd be nice to have some kind of medical truck as far as that goes, cut down your mileage and everything.
So in a perfect world,
Yeah.
we increase staffing to 4. We could afford to drop someone off of an engine to run a medical call, right? And even then, staffing is still a concern, having enough able bodies on scene.
Yeah.
And years ago, before I was the chief, our squad ran our medical calls.
Right.
2 instances when I first became the chief that they were on a medical call on the way back. One day they had stopped at Hendricks for breakfast and they got hit for a structure fire.
Yeah.
They had to go the opposite direction to go back to the station.
Yeah, I
So
understand.
the only reason, and although diesel is more costly, wear and tear is much more expensive than a pickup, but ensuring that our staff are capable and able to protect the citizens to whatever that hazard may be is the simple reason we have them on
I
the engine.
understand. I just wish there was more options.
Absolutely.
I know you do too.
Yes, sir.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
In regard to the deficit of employment, how many people ideally would make a perfect fire station? Ideally.
That's a trick question.
Ideally.
So, and when this was prior to you, we had discussed, when we increased to 3 per a day, that is national bare minimum.
Okay.
If you look at the city of Salisbury, there's been a lot of media coverage reflecting what they do when they drop below 3. Not that it's normal for us, but we do that quite often, right? Especially when we've had vacancies in positions, part-timers don't pick stuff up, and I'm only one person and I'm human and I have a life outside of my job. Sometimes we fall below 2 versus taking that truck out of service. Ideally, we have no less than 4 per an apparatus. 1, right, the more people you put on scene, you lessen the workload on the individual, but it also allows us internally to meet the OSHA 2 in, 2 out requirement for IDLH atmospheres, whereas currently we can't do that. Although I arrive as an incident commander, I'm not included in that group, so we're waiting on mutual aid to do a lot of things, while also recognizing that's a huge budget cost. And so myself and Heather had today just some conversation of what does that look like funding it from a part-time standpoint, you know, and there's plenty of options. Ideally, right, we could throw 1,000 fire trucks on it. We could always want more, but being comfortable with what we have, trying to make the most of what we have. Another thing that has no bearing on ISO that I told Heather and Peter today I'm extremely nervous about is the North Carolina Administrative Code dictates that at any point as a single firehouse fire department, we cannot drop below 15 people on our roster that are certified training hours individuals. The issue is that some of our volunteers they're just not meeting that threshold, right? They may have 25 years of service in, but they're not showing up to training. Some of them are physically unable to train, but they do still provide some benefit to the town. Part-time staff, again, when we're talking about minimal shifts of availability, they're leaving here to go somewhere where they can work 2-3 days a week to make some additional supplemental income. And so when they're not working, it means they're not getting their training hours. And so we could have them on the roster, but if they have 10 training hours, I cannot certify them on the roster. If I do, that's fraud. And I enjoy freedom. But if we drop below 15, and in full transparency, we were either right below or right on the line this year. And it's not from a lack of trying, it's not from a lack of want. But once that happens, the state will come in and we will be expected to provide, here's a plan, in 6 months we're going to remedy this issue. If not, we're what they call non-S compliant, and it could escalate to them removing the charter from the fire department. And there's nothing that I or we could do to stop that. So again, just in thinking, personnel is extremely important, and although we again have made leaps and bounds, there are still a lot of needs.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I have a quick question, Chief. In the perfect world, I know we just discussed about personnel and the engines. Now, if there was some way that we could get the secondary truck, the radiator fixed on it, would it be good enough to put back in service? Or is there other issues that may arise from that to try to take some of the capacity off of the full-time truck that we have?
That is the majority of the issue. We had a lot of air leaks to the point the driver's seat wouldn't even stay up with the air pillow that's under the seat in the air ride. And we have, through the budget this year, have addressed a lot of that. Currently, the truck is in service. just knowing, hey, if something goes south, this could happen. But if we were to have a large incident tonight, I will recall a full-time shift, and they will get on that truck and staff that truck to ensure that our town's protected while the on-duty shift or company is elsewhere.
So with that being said, that particular truck, the backup truck, what is it valued at? This.
I do not even want to make a poke because the last time I did, the 95E1 proved me wrong.
Because
I said the last time I took a guess, the 95, I would have never thought we'd have had an issue making money off of that truck. And we were lucky to make $25,000, I think, from the college.
Because my thing is, would it be beneficial to invest in that, or to alleviate that and have another truck?
So, with current lead times in apparatus manufacturing, as we've seen with our peers, we're still 2 to 3 years from lead time from order to completion. There is a large trend for the first time in 30 years where organizations are looking to the used fire truck market more than they are new. So if I was to have a recommendation in a perfect world, is that we send that truck to get the body redone, and we refurb that truck. If it means a new motor, it means a new motor. You know, I know there are several places on the frame of that truck that are cracked, and it's been that way since before I was the fire chief, right? There's a lot of needs, but we, put a bandage on it and try to make it till tomorrow.
Understood.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
I think we need to, Steve, the point that you make about having something that simply runs medical, because I understand, the impact then is having to add that fourth person, but you're talking about needing to add that fourth person in an ideal world. I would be interested to run the calculations on what the cost of that staff adding that over time to ultimately reduce your overtime, right? And then have that vehicle to then be able to monetize what the wear and tear on our primary truck. It may end up being that it comes out cheaper and it's a whole lot more efficient and it achieves the objectives, because I think that's the reality. So much of the staffing need, so much of the call volume, all of that is related to medical costs.
It is.
And so we've got to find a better way to respond to those costs than having to send out a large fire truck with 4 people on it or 3 people on it every time.
And currently, just food for thought as why a second company at some point is going to be important. As of last year, 35% of our calls were overlapping, which means while they're on a call, they're getting a second call or a third call. And, we have great mutual aid relationships for the first time in a long time. However, the city of Salisbury, Millers Ferry, East Spencer, it's not their taxpayers' responsibility to provide protection for the town of Spencer. Although there are times where we do the exact same thing.
Correct.
So I know today they were on call and had 2 additional at the same time. So that's becoming more and more frequent. When that happens, normally I just walk out of the office, whatever I'm doing, or leave the first call to go to the second to try to offset that need for mutual aid, but it's not always feasible or effective.
So I know we've not been successful with the SAFER grants, but I know that Salisbury recently was. Do we know how they were able to go about?
I do not. I've had conversations with Chief McBride, who, at least to my knowledge, up to maybe hopefully the same, as normally the one that heads that up. And I don't know that there's a rhyme or reason. And I've not got anyone from the government to be able to give me a rhyme or reason either. Besides, they all act like they want to scratch their heads when we say, hey, this is seemingly backwards. But I have noticed your larger municipalities that are going to, if NFPA says 4 is the minimum, if we're increasing staffing to 4 or to put more companies in service, they are getting those grants much more common than, in my opinion, the small people that really need it from a funding standpoint.
And I think, if I remember correctly, our attempts we were trying to get to 3. And I think we did get some feedback that they just didn't see the point in providing the grant basically towards non-compliant.
Well, in the first year we used a grant writing service out of Texas, and they did not necessarily paint a pretty picture for us as the town. I feel like they kind of threw mud. and both myself and Peter agreed we weren't going to use that company again. The next year, I wrote it myself, Peter, and Joe reviewed it for almost a whole day, going through, making some changes we felt was a much stronger application and grant, and we didn't even make it to the actual peer review process the second year. First year we did. The second year, the computer system threw our application out before it ever got in front of a human being.
Yeah, so I think it's helpful to know those tricks because, I mean, we talk about larger agencies, and yeah, Salisbury is significantly larger, but it's not to the level of some of the ones we had seen before, like
Absolutely.
Chicago and New York and some of those that we're getting.
Yeah.
But, you know, to that point, Lexington got it the year before or 2 years before.
16, I think it was 16 people they were approved for.
And so maybe that's the issue. We're not asking for enough, and we need to outline what we believe our future plan needs to be, not just next year, but what it needs to be once we have all of this development that happens and everything like that. The other thing I think that I want to bring up is I think we need to do on the board a better job of advocating to our federal legislators that, hey, you've got to fix, you know, you got to help with this process and you got to fix the system. But the other thing I wanted to bring up is I know other peer municipalities of ours in Rowan County are using the services of a lobbyist, and we are not taking the advantage of that. And I think it's something we ought to talk about because for things like this, I think it's important to have somebody at the state and federal level that can really push for things like this.
Absolutely.
Aren't they using the, through the chamber?
I'm not sure who they're using. I know China Grove, I believe, uses it. Granite Quarry uses one.
Okay.
There are a number of them. We should, and I can check and find out. And it sounds like, yeah, that's just an additional service, but on the same token, when we're trying to go after things like this, it would be helpful to have somebody that knows the ins and outs of it.
Well, even the city of Salisbury with their construction of their newest fire station on Mahaley Avenue, that was funded,
right?
You know, externally.
Yeah, yeah, and we're missing out on those. You know, Joe does a great job with parks and recreation, but some of these other things, it seems like we're missing out when other folks are capitalizing on them.
I wonder if the grant writing people at Central Lina or their lobbyists at Central Lina would be able to.
Who we're checking into.
Yeah. I'm on their executive committee now as of last month, and so we have our first meeting on the 11th next Wednesday.
All right. Good stuff to think about. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and we're our next goal is community outreach and involvement, and I'll jump in and invite Anna to jump in at any point. But the three main factors of that are around enhancing our community engagement and multimedia communication, our growing our events and partnerships, and improving our community signage and public art. So that you see a list there of a variety of things that we've been working on over the last year or so, ranging from our new electronic message sign being operational, launching our neighborhood walks and Talk of the Town series, being engaged in a variety of ways with students, and of course with the new park, there's already been a variety of events and many in the works for the coming year. And we of course talked about one earlier. We've had a partnership recently with the Rowan County Public Library and the American Heart Association around blood pressure monitoring equipment, and we even have our historic district sign topper program that was implemented. So a variety of things there that have spoken or been outcomes of this priority goal area. All right.
Any questions, board? I've got a question. We've got two folks out in the audience, and from a community outreach and involvement. Any feedback for us? You know, we've tried to do, like with the neighborhood walks, talk of the town, any feedback. I know we typically have the same folks that are coming, and that's great that y'all are engaged and participating in those. I think one of the things is we'd love to learn how to reach more people with these efforts. Any thoughts?
I was able to come to the top of the town, where the police department, I think it's a pot. I was kind of sad about more participation, right here, but that's being said. I still thank y'all that. I mean, y'all give y'all time every day. And when you look out here, here, do they not know what's going on? Or y'all guys communicating? I know you put it online on the damn website. I saw it.
Yeah, it's on social media. It's, I guess the question is are there other ways to reach? I don't know, Carla, do you have thoughts?
I think next door is much more active than Facebook. I think not too better to get on next door.
Yeah.
And Spencer seems to be next door. I think too, we can look at the demographics of the town. We've got a lot of folks with kids. They can't just leave their kids and come up here at 6:30 and be here until 9. You know, if you're trying to activate park and recreation, that's an opportunity to have kids events going in parallel with the talk of the town and the walk. I know those of us, you know, my neighbors, we all like it. And I think we're the consistent view. But we enjoy it. We enjoy it, especially when I know everybody has to do the things, but especially with the information on the employee, that was great. You know, there was a lot of good information, a lot of feedback. We do appreciate it. Again, we realize it's been our long time, and so we appreciate that y'all actually move forward with it and let's continue. I do think that you know, looking at the demographics of food and men.
But you're right, it's tough, right?
Yeah.
Families with kids,
Yeah.
they can't necessarily do it at night, but they can't do it during the day either because they're working. So, yeah.
But if you could do some parallel stuff, especially people who love it, and they're hard.
Yeah.
And the other thing, if I may add to that, for neighborhood walk, not speaking of it. If there's some issues that arise during the walk or the top of the town, residents want to see resolved. It's great going on the walk and then fellowship with one another. But if there's a legitimate issue raised, it's then expect for it to be resolved. I mean, I understand you can't do it overnight.
Right.
You got to dot I's and cross T's, but that's a big issue from what I hear from a lot of residents. Well, I don't come because when I bring things up, they don't do anything about it. That's the reality of it.
Yeah, which is a great point because that's not necessarily true, but it's being able to,
Misperception.
we've talked about it, closing the feedback loop, right?
But to this point, if things are happening and we see that things are happening, for some of the walks that get on the thing, if we see that, I used to have the boss that we say is not bragging if it's true, and I don't think the things that are getting fixed are the things that are getting bragged about. I know it's boring to show that a hole has been fixed or a sinkhole has been fixed and putting that on social media. But those are the things we want to fix.
Yeah,
Goes a long way.
it's a great point.
Make fixes of it.
Nothing that simple goes a long way.
I was thinking as you were talking, as you were saying that, I was thinking that, you know, one of the things that was identified was that big pipe down there beside the Transportation Museum that was a hole, and that was resolved. But I don't know that we've talked about it. Yeah.
Joel, you need to toot your horn a little more.
I just told him,
Yeah.
send me pictures and I'll.
And you have to report it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great point.
That's a good point, side by side. Okay.
At one time during the designated board meetings on Tuesday.
Yeah.
They used to have old business versus new business.
Mm-hmm.
And the very thing that we're talking about, you guys bring up, hey, under old business, this will resolve. But somewhere down the road over here, that went away. So maybe y'all can entertain, reintroducing that.
It's good feedback.
So business and new business.
Okay.
Let me make a suggestion also. I think one of the best things Joel done in the last 2 weeks is cut these trees behind
Yeah.
here.
Yes.
And nobody noticed it.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And that really has brightened it up, and I think that's a great. I guess we don't own those down there at the far end.
They weren't in the roadway,
They wasn't in the roadway.
as much.
It's really not needed on those because they're not hanging into the road as far as those work, but.
I'd like to see them all gone. I mean, crepe myrtles are nice, but the rest of it, I think needs to go.
Make a list.
Yeah.
Things that you brought up through, if I may. Other than Steve and, other than Mr. Miller and the secret, I played with the family and talked to everybody long. Went to Spencer School, kindergarten, first and second grade. In the back of the school, 3rd Street side, all my life, we had another beautiful, Joel had to take it down because of this. This goes back to 10 feet. Where we're going to replant. Little things like that, that's simple. I don't think there's a lot of I's you got to dot, T's you got to cross. To put a couple of red oaks or white oak trees.
And you bring up a good point, because I know something Mr. Blunt has talked about, and that is a street tree program to really work to make sure we're maintaining, when trees have to come down, that we're have a plan to replace and hopefully grow that tree canopy. So good feedback.
I love this feedback, and I'd like to revisit our list of seemingly smaller projects at our budget meeting, and I hope that you guys will join us again, because, I always go home with like acid reflux after we talk about how are we going to maintain our, public safety services and still keep the lights on. But at the same time, we have such big dreams and wanting to replant trees, we need to replant them. And so I just think that really comes back to our priorities and our balance. And so I love this conversation, and I want us to remember this at budget time, because this is going to be a lively conversation again.
And the last thing I had to make, there's the qualification presentation this week, about, is that going to be addressed?
Yeah.
Tomorrow, or?
Yeah, and he did give an update earlier during our regular part of the meeting on that. But yeah, it'll be part of that discussion. Carla?
Trees and all that stuff. Can we partner with the state arbor?
I don't believe so. Yeah, we've got an arborist in the room.
Yeah. He's ignoring us.
He is, but Joe, that's Joe's specialty.
I've been trying to let that license Come on, Joe.
Yeah. Good stuff. Thank y'all. Appreciate the feedback.
And your presence.
Yes. That's good. No, that's good.
That's good.
And there will be we're taking a little more time than I envisioned on this section, but it's good. It's good, and there'll be the next piece we get to will invite more conversation. Our last area is around staff excellence, attracting and supporting a talented staff and improving the administration of town government. And if you look back 5 years or 10 years, you could make comparisons over time of how that has happened. We have had a few specific things we're working on this fiscal year, and I'd say the one at the top of the list that was a really driving force with the budget was the implementation of our compensation and classification study that was done last year. And so we have been working on implementing those to bring all of our staff to the new minimum pay grades, and with quarterly adjustments this fiscal year, that 2 Mondays from now, the last step will become effective in that process. And so that's been a journey, and but that has been a key investment in our staff this year, and one that we worked hard towards. And at the same time, we know we can't really just call ourselves that we've done it and say okay, because then the world will continue to move around us. One item that I think is important for us to think about is not to try to do that in the approach that we have with an all at once, every 5 years or so, but more of an ongoing analysis where we can take our organization and look at a piece of it each year, so that the lifts are spread out and lighter lifts that over time has the same effect, but it's more of about pieces of the organization taking turns in kind of a rotation, and that might help us accomplish this type of thing in a more sustainable way going forward. So I think that's going to be a big thing to look at in the future. We continue to look at process improvements. We're right now looking at process improvements related to our event permits. We're also looking at process improvements internally to make sure things are streamlined for our staff when it comes to our HR, finance, payroll type of things. We want to dig into dialogue and engagement with our staff, and there's a lot of ideas that have swirled around in my mind, and I know in the mind of all of our leadership team, and that's on the to-do list, is to dig into that together and look how forward we make sure that our staff feel like they have a voice in the organization and that they're a partner in the process. So I think there's just some big opportunities going forward, and but this piece of the puzzle is the underlying part of our priorities that makes everything else possible, because what we do is we provide service to the community, and that's possible through our outstanding team members. Any questions on that?
One thing that's come to my mind is that, we have Livingstone College, we have Catawba College, we have Royds Cabarrus Community College. Is there any way that we might work with interns from those facilities, from those organizations? I mean, the folks at Livingstone have said that they would like to have opportunities for interns.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
just a thought.
It becomes a budget item, right? I think there was a time where folks would have more of an unpaid internship type situation, and that's not really a good idea for a variety of reasons. And so, the ability to host interns becomes, partially a budget issue, being able to fund internships, but also then the capacity issue to effectively supervise and manage and give the interns what they deserve. So. I think for small organizations, it's just generally a little more challenging, but certainly something to strive towards, because that is how you develop the next generation of public servants.
It's one of the things is, the thought with the intern program, when you bring an intern in, they're going to gain valuable experience and they're going to learn and everything like that. What you can't do necessarily is bring an intern in thinking that you're going to get more work productivity because you have an intern. It's more of a teaching experience. Because once you bring that intern in, the reality is, so Peter brings on an intern, his productivity is going to go down because he's got to train. And so that's why internship programs are great to build kind of long-term, as a long-term staff development program. But you got to pour a lot into it, not just money, but time as well to make it successful.
I understand that. And I know we spread our staff thin already. I know that. We've got lots of people wearing more than one hat.
But it is something we should remain open to considering.
Well, then too, even with possibly entertaining an internship or something of that nature, you may possibly be able to train someone that may come on as a valuable staff within the town upon completion of graduation, or just they could be somewhere else, and that's another resident here in the town and someone that can be employed.
And I'll point out, we've effectively had interns in through the leagues program,
Right.
that have, contributed, and, Sky contributed greatly.
Oh, yeah.
But the reality is, none of those are town employees now. So.
And that was an example of specifically, that we would have loved to have continued that relationship with a part-time position, and it was one that we just weren't able to make happen.
Yep.
All right. Very good. So the next part is the part of the agenda now that we're calling the community engagement opportunity, and so to explain to those here, we put together a pre-event survey for our elected officials to consider a few questions, and we're going to go over the results of that survey and then invite our community members to see what, how they agree or disagree with that, see if, the trends that emerge align with what the community members are thinking, and it just to help continue this high level thinking as we go towards tomorrow. So there were kind of three main areas that this survey was asking. One was about the top projects that we need to complete, more like what are our opportunities. We also asked about what are the challenges that if we didn't do them are going to be a detriment. And then from that, kind of distilling those things down, our main challenges and opportunities, which do our elected officials, at this moment feel are the ones that are worthy of investment. And then there was another part of this that was exploring alternative revenues that we haven't really been working with. But to focus on the first question, and again, I'm not. Everybody hopefully has this in front of them, which was kind of a printout of the results. But what we have on the screen is a summary that it generates, and I think. Dustin, if you can do the word cloud on this first one, because it actually you see that on the bottom left button, the word cloud. Yeah. So this is what kind of emerged out of that first question. Some of the trending, the larger words are the trends, where we see park, we see housing, we see development. I think economic development was a big trend. Business growth, recreation, beautifying infrastructure, all those types of things. Those seem to be the trends that were emerging in those questions. But there's a lot of detail there. I don't know if based on I think what I'd like to do here is kind of go over this in a summary format, and then we'll allow our community members to chime in, and then mayor and board, then y'all will have a turn to kind of share what you think after hearing the feedback. But I'd suggest kind of taking a look at here, and this will help us identify, the areas of alignment. Moving on to challenges. Challenges that would be detrimental to our community if not addressed in the next 10 years. So growth is a big piece of it. The need to add commercial growth and economic development again. Expanding our departments to embrace the growth we're having. I think that's in terms of our staff numbers. Developing our park use and maintenance. Streets and sidewalks is listed several times. The condition of buildings in town. Again, there's a comment about stagnant household incomes, income mobility, community prosperity. Those are all speaking to economic development. And another comment about the need for appropriately funding our staff and equipment needs. So the challenges and the opportunities have some overlaps there. And so when you go to the next question and ask of these opportunities and challenges, what are the top three? So we asked everybody responding to kind of distill all that down, and so I'm just going to kind of read through these response by response. The first one was commercial growth, repair of the town streets, and funding our employees. The next was it says Parks and Activity Director, expansion and retention in police and fire, and update or expand fire departments, which I believe is talking about the project, the fire station project. Next, a plan for housing that could be affordable for young people and older people downsizing. Supporting however we can those people or industries bringing their business or revitalization goals to town, and working to connect our Greenway and Blueway to our neighbors. Next, housing and economic growth. And then the last response, direction and oversight for active living growth. I think that's speaking towards the recreation staffing. Continued attention to funding proactive police, fire, staff and equipment, and community concerns for potholes and street maintenance. So in general, we're hearing trends where around economic development, around infrastructure, around parks and recreation activation that we've talked about, and around staff retention and recruitment. Those seem to me to be emerging, out of all that discussion as, the key areas. And of course, those areas aren't surprising. The next question we asked was about, to what extent should we consider the various alternative revenue sources? And this chart is pretty neat. There were a list of possibilities listed with a range of that we absolutely should use that revenue source to. I would never support use of that revenue source, and you see the way it shows up on the chart. Kind of the left of center is positive, and the right of center is negative. So on the first question is about the use of bonds or other debt proceeds to make significant capital investments. There's not really alignment there. It's kind of straddling the yes or no line. So that may be an area of that you say, well, we either need to discuss that and figure it out, or you might say, we don't have consensus on it. In other words, the other two, there's much more consensus on exploring those options, more of a positive reaction. One being advocacy with Rowan County for the expansion of the local option sales tax. And then a third option there listed of a stormwater fee for better stormwater maintenance. So those were the three that were listed in the survey. And again, you kind of see how those fell on the survey. And then the final question was, were there any other revenue options that weren't listed that should be considered? And the responses, there were three responses there. One said possible sale and development of our old town hall and property. Two, when we need to raise taxes, I can usually support this. We give a lot of services for the buck. And then a question about the local option sales tax. Would it be collected on businesses within our town limits? Only be collected on businesses within the town limits. If so, can we determine the value? And my initial reaction or answer to that is it's really done at a county level, I believe. So that's why it was kind of asked about advocacy with the county, because it would be something that the county commissioners would need to decide whether or not for the entire county they would want to establish. But there are county by county, when you go and buy things, you pay a different amount of sales tax based on what articles have been adopted in that county. And so we have some articles that have not been adopted here that may be authorized. There's some places, I believe in Mecklenburg County, there's actually some specific articles authorized there that aren't authorized anywhere else.
Well, and they just recently had a new referendum and had to get state approval for the sales tax increase relative to their transportation authority.
Yeah.
So.
So would that take a referendum? It would, or does that?
I believe it would. I believe you would typically have a referendum measure, for that process to be considered.
So I've got a question for the board. As you completed the survey, can you go back to the slide before this? That very first one strikes me because I almost have a question. Is it those that maybe said that they were somewhat opposed to this, is it because the word debt or the word bonds scares you, or is it that there's maybe a lack of understanding of what these products or these type of programs truly are?
Both.
Okay.
Yes, and.
See, so I think that's a great point because I think, and it comes to the fact that if we ever try to do this and selling it to the public, obviously with bonds, I think there's an inherent lack of understanding just in the general population about how these products work. And I think it would be very beneficial at some point in the very near future to be able to talk about this and better understand how these programs work. Because just like with your home, right, your household, there's certain things that you're going to have to finance. And there's certain things that we are financing, right? Our garbage truck, our fire truck, our town hall, right? And so there's a period where all municipalities at some point should take on some level of debt, right? I mean, it's actually recommended. And to think that you're not going to take on any debt as a municipality is probably a very narrow-minded way of thinking. But also, you don't want to become over-leveraged with that debt, right? And so I think it's, something, whether it's loan financing like we're doing, but then there's this other concept of bonds as well that ultimately the public has to buy into. To really, I think if we can have a better understanding as a board of what those look like. And the reason I say that is because the reality is these other two things, they're not going to make much of a dent. I mean, the sales tax a little bit, stormwater fees are really not going to make much of an impact. It'll help with maintenance, leaf collection, some of those sorts of things. But based on the size of town we are, it's not going to make a big impact on the overall infrastructure needs, particularly for stormwater. And it's very focused on that particular area. The reality is we've got some significant capital investments that have to happen over the next several years, like a fire station and a variety of other things that we've talked about. And we're going to have to figure out a way to pay for those outside of just our traditional options, I think. The good news is that economic development is on the way that's going to help with some of that. But we want to pass some of that back to our citizens and being able to reduce the tax burden on their individual households because of this new development that's coming in. So I think we need to keep an open mind about what options are out there with funding. So my ask would be if we can, at some point in the near future, have somebody to come in and talk with the board about different
bond referendums and
how they work, everything like that.
How you pay that interest and what term it is and how you pay back at the end.
Yep. Absolutely. This is a community input opportunity.
We would ask if you would come and use the microphone because we are live streaming and.
Can we bring the microphone to him?
It has wheels.
Yes, sir.
We can. You'll do it, and then I'll summarize for those that are listening in.
Is there state law, state rule, federal law, federal rule as far as how much debt a municipality can carry?
So the question from the audience was, is there a state or federal law related to how much debt a municipality can carry? And the answer is yes, there are. There are limits on the debt that you can carry. It also carries over to your audit as well. And basically it's a state requirement, and I don't know the exact number and all of that, but basically the state will not let you become over leveraged in your debt, and that's the local government commission, the LGC, is ultimately over that. So there would be limitations to that for sure.
For some reason, 8% is standing out in my head, but I've been wrong before.
Yeah.
So I don't take it, with the 8% for some reason.
On an
stands out.
annualized
Yeah.
basis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, when I talk to people and they talk about Spencer, the people outside of Spencer are talking about how well this town is doing and all the progress that we're making. So, I mean, I think there's a lot of favorable people in the area who see what's happening here and would probably be inclined to, get involved if they have an opportunity to buy a bond. I mean, that's just kind of what I get a feel from, because there are a lot of people who say, y'all are doing great things out there.
Carla.
For me, because I'm not scared of bonds, because I'm used to it.
Right.
And I think that's a very productive way to actually get things done. The last two, as a person who has had their taxes increased and their taxes increased, I'm not gonna look at what that increase is. I'm not gonna care of the sales tax. I'm not gonna care of stormwater. I am going to fight these people now because it's been, we have 2 years, 3 years. 3 years of increase, right? Because we had the county, then we had the city, and then we had the peak city vehicle tax that was due. So we've had 3 years. I'm gonna fight one. I'm gonna support it all.
Right.
But I am just gonna see, y'all put 2 more taxes on. And you, like you said, the reality of it is, on the sales tax, it's not gonna raise that much, not gonna be enough, and on the stormwater, it's the same thing. You're not gonna get enough to really have impact with a bond referendum.
Thank you. Good input.
It is 8%. 8% of the property tax value.
Okay. Yep.
Mr. Mayor, do you want to summarize Carla's
Yes.
feedback
So
for the listeners at home?
yeah, Ms. Gray made the comment that looking at these 3 options, that, in her opinion, a bond would be supported. But the next 2 options, they're basically just an increase, yet another increase in taxes, whether it's a stormwater fee or whether it's an additional sales tax. And that's something that she said that she would be adamantly opposed to. So point taken. Thank you. Okay.
Yep. So I guess if that's all the feedback, then it's time for the board to kind of chew on these concepts and see if there's any further thoughts y'all would like to add in.
Board, I'm going to open it up. Any thoughts, comments, questions, any food for thought as we move into tomorrow, where we really dive into these options some more for priorities?
I'm gonna start. I think the key to this town is, of course, we talk about commercial growth, and that's what's going to pay for this new fire department or maybe some of the growth that these people need. So we do need commercial growth. Whether it's in our exterior areas where we're thinking about commercial growth going out there, or is it inside our city limits? And I think some ways I really wish we would sell our own community. We don't stress. We got too many empty buildings that are eyesores, and I'd really like to see something happen to them. Now, I'm not trying to put any more work on Steve, but and I give you an example. Well, maybe I shouldn't give you an example, but I will anyway. the person that bought the little choo-choo track place up here, I understand he outbid Rob Nance for the thing. Rob's telling me about it, how he developed that and all that. And I think he went around asking people, what does Spencer need? And I don't think he really got an answer, maybe, I don't know. But somehow he came up with an idea, we need another restaurant. Now, 5 years ago, I would agree with him. We need another restaurant. But right now, for our little community, we got five little restaurants within 2 blocks. And I hate to say it, I don't think we need any restaurants. But he went to the extent of hiring an architect to draw plans. And for somebody to come in and develop a restaurant for him. And I think that's the wrong approach as far as it goes. And I don't know the man. I appreciate what he did, but I'd rather see some diversified businesses in the community. I want to see some growth in some of these old buildings. And I think Steve came up with the idea of this entertainment on 5th Street. I really think that's a good idea. But we've got so many buildings that are sitting empty that I really would like to see us develop. And I really want to say, somehow or another, see if we can sell our own town, because 95% of the people that come to Spencer comes to the museum. I mean, that's it, really. And everything should be developed around tourism, because that's why they come here. Now, restaurants are tourism. That's good, but I'd like to see some associated businesses like. God, I can't think of the lady who ran the place down here, which used to be Studemeyer's. Mary
Mays.
Mary Mays.
Shop.
That was
Retail.
a good business. I'd
Retail
like to see
is what
something
yours
like
is,
that.
Yeah.
I'd like to see somehow or another we encourage and try to ask our merchants who have these empty buildings to, hey, aren't you interested in developing Spencer? Or are you sitting on a gold mine? You think it's going to develop here in the next 10 or 15 years? Or are you just don't want to develop it? Or are you afraid to develop it? Or something like that? I think we need to sell our community, and we need to sell it around Transportation Museum. I really think that's a goal for that. And I'll give you a prime example of that. And I can't think of the name, but there was a town in the state of Washington, kind of east of Seattle, that 30 years ago, the town was dwindling up. They didn't have, the town was getting ready to foreclose and everything else. And some of the merchants came up with the idea, since they were German ancestors, they wanted to develop a town like a German village. And I think it's Leavenworth or something like that. And now that town is revolved around a German theme. And it's a real tourist attraction. People come just to come by and look at that thing. I'd like to see I don't want us to sit on, I think we need to encourage and push people to do things. I don't know who's going to do it, but I think we need to, like I said, we need to sell our community. Period.
Okay. Thanks, Mr. Miller. Other board input and thoughts?
Well, I talked to people about, possibilities of coming here. And, I've offered, I talked to a butcher shop over in Lexington, and they were interested in that, but they kind of signed into, haven't really finalized it yet, but they're still looking at Salisbury for that. And, even just in the last few weeks. But I mean, yeah, I agree with you, Steve. It'd be great to have some of these empty storefronts, with something in them. But you've got to have, as an entrepreneur, you have to have financial backing to be able to do that.
I agree.
We can talk to people about our town and about what we have here and what we can offer, but it's got to have somebody that's got some deep pockets. And I'd like to find somebody like the guy who came in and brought the ballpark in Annapolis with deep pockets to come here and put something down there at the Yadkin River Park. But I mean,
Well, and I think the other point is, it's not just the deep pockets, is you have to, when it comes to development, you have to reduce the risk, right? Because that's the big thing, is if you can reduce the risk. And that right now, like, people are looking and saying, yeah, it's great. Spencer's on the move. They're on the up and up, but there's still an inherent risk, right? And so I think that's what maybe we need to be focusing on is how do we reduce the risk for those businesses? You know, what are the things we as a town can start to do to help lower that risk and help ensure that they will be successful? Hey, I'll take another restaurant in town any day. I think as long as you have a diverse offering
But I
of
just
types.
don't want to affect the sales from other.
Right, and I think that's a hesitancy of a lot of folks, and the reality is what you see with retail, and it's, if you recall the Town book that we talked about several years ago, is the reality is when it comes to retail and stuff like that, it's not the folks like businesses that are side by side or business, they're not competing against each other. What you're competing for is a group of people, oftentimes from other areas. And so, I mean, I think it's a great point. Like, the reality is we're competing for folks from Salisbury, you know, businesses in Salisbury. You look at, when we talk about tourism, those are the ones we're in direct competition for lodging, right? We don't have lodging really that we can offer, a few Airbnbs, but no lodging. That's a huge thing that, you've got to have first before we can have tourists that are going to stay and spend their money here, right? Is they've got to have a place to stay. They're going to spend their money where they stay. And so if we can keep them from going home and have things that they can do here in town and a place that they can stay, then they're going to go to the restaurants and they're going to go to the retail. But we've got to get the right pieces in place. And I think with the development happening towards the interstate, there's the potential that some of those things might happen here over the next decade. But I hear you, like needing to make use of the space that we already have. And I think we need to be creative about that. The other thing I would encourage us to do is make use of the tourism authority, right? You know, we need to push on them. They do a lot to promote businesses and lodging and everything in Salisbury, you know, but most of that tourism is coming right here. We need to push on them to advocate for us and help us with some of those strategies here in town.
You know, if there was lodging here, we'd be getting some tourism dollars.
Yes.
You know, because there's a tax on every.
But let us not forget that as we develop in those businesses and things like that, don't just need to be focused solely on tourism. Because the big thing that we hear is our residents, they want businesses that they can shop and keep their money, services, whether it's a bank, whether it's, thank goodness we've got a pharmacy coming with the Northern Rowan Family Medicine.
Right.
So we have a pharmacy that is coming as a part of the partnership that we did with Northern Rowan Family Medicine across from Food Lion. They got a grant to do that expansion, and the town was able to help participate in advocating for that grant. And one of the things they're going to be adding is a pharmacy that will be open to the community. So, and my understanding, I think, is one of our local Rowan County providers will ultimately end up running that. But you know, things like that, there are a variety of different just general day-to-day services that people have requested. And I recognize we're in a very difficult situation with retail. So much of what we do from a retail standpoint is all online now. But finding those niche retail options, like, you know, Mary May's was definitely a unique store. But I think rather than us trying to fill those vacant spots, is trying to find a way to reduce the risk and trying to make sure that we've got the support process in place that's really going to help them succeed.
And it's a whole lot like the fact that, you know, people have said they'd like to have Cracker Barrel or, you know, another big restaurant or another chain, you know, but we don't have the population to support it.
That's right.
So
that's the other thing is I've talked with certain folks, certain businesses about potentially expanding their operations here. One of the things that they look at is, you know, the number of people. They look at, you know, just the general area. Beyond that they could draw the competition in other communities. And right now, that's one of the biggest risks. So then the question is, well, how do we reduce that risk? We reduce that risk by having economic development along 85 in those areas that then start to bring additional people in, And so it's one of those like chicken and egg sorts of things. Somebody's not going to come in and be successful by putting a business, a small business in, hoping that they're going to cater to a community of 15,000 people when they've only got 3,500 people to draw from. So
And pay minimum wage.
right. So it's a tricky situation. There's a company out there called, I think, Retail Strategies or something, that they're a consultant that's solely what they focus on. And I'm sure they make a whole lot of money coming up with plans. I'd love to see their success rate in actually filling vacant spaces. But I think it's something that all towns our size struggle with. The good thing is I think we've got lots of tailwinds that are pushing us along, and the future, I think, is bright. I think we just have to be cognizant that it's not going to all happen at one time, right? We have to take the small wins. We have to take the queso sauces and the Mexicasas and the Fleming Streets and the Spencer Deli, all those things. Like, those are great adds to our community, but they didn't all happen at once, right? They've happened over the last several years. But you're right, Steve. What hasn't happened is retail. Like, if anything, we've seen that go away.
Yeah.
I mean, we want people are across the street, and we said, if we build this park, they'll come across the street. Well, maybe. There's nothing really besides the restaurant to bring them across the street.
Yeah.
But they don't have any restaurants over there, so they have to come somewhere else.
They have to come here, but once they eat, there's nothing else to do.
Exactly. Well, when I talked to some people out here on election day who were sitting in the pavilion, and they had gotten their food or they ordered their food from over at Roger Dogs, and she brought it over and delivered it to them. They were from I believe they're from Raleigh, and they had 2 grandkids with them, and they'd been over to the train museum, and so I talked to them about the doll and toy museum. I talked to them about the other things. I talked to them about Standback Forest. Talked to them about the trails at the river. I talked to them about the park across the river, and to let them know that there is more here.
So I think you hit on exactly what Steve was saying, that we need to do a better job of selling our community. And I think we heard it from the folks here. We need to do a better job selling it to the folks that live here too, right? Making sure they know what's going on. Carla.
I just got one question that came up in this discussion. You talk about economic development, and every business that you mentioned that has come in has been brought in by a very specific person, people. Have y'all had a discussion with them on how, and maybe thought about having an economic forum, economic development forum with them, if they were willing to talk to property owners? Because I know that they've given incentives. They're responsible for those businesses.
Yeah.
You've got a template right there. You've got people that are successful in bringing in businesses into this town. They're your consultants right there.
Yeah.
Have y'all had that consideration of talking to them?
We do have, is it monthly? You have monthly meetings with them. But not specifically on maybe that topic.
Yeah, I mean, those are more geared towards being neighbors here in the shop, in the shop, in the Park Plaza. But certainly an interesting idea, because they are an example of folks who were from here, had relocated, chose to come back home, in other words, and to invest in Spencer, and we have seen quite a bit of new things.
And I think it would be helpful for us to understand and talk with folks like that and others to understand what, the reasons that certain things have been successful and the reason certain things have not. Because we've seen a mix, right? There are things that have come in and very quickly left. Unfortunately, what we've typically seen leave is retail. They come in and so that's a great suggestion. Thank you. Okay,
I just thought I'd end on a high note. I was thinking back to last year, and while I think we had 2 people join us, I think only 1 was a resident. So we've doubled resident participation, and I'm thrilled. And I really appreciate the feedback very much. So
the eternal optimist. I love it.
I am.
Thank you. Any other thoughts? I think tomorrow's going to be an exciting day. Very much looking forward to it and spending the day with each of you. Joe?
I went to the Main Street conference 2 months ago over in Georgia, and there was a retail strategist there, and he said, he started his talk about improving retail by telling a joke. He said there are several really good books to help small towns improve retail. You can buy them all on Amazon.
There you go. Ha Well, I'll close this out tonight by just saying, really kind of the theme of what we're looking for going in tomorrow is focused on how we, as a town, as a team, how we work to eliminate roadblocks. So be thinking about that. I'll kick us off in the morning with a couple of remarks focused on that, but just be thinking of that and how we can turn roadblocks into opportunities. All right. So with yes.
Yes. So and so town hall will open at 8:30 like usual, and we will kick off at about 9 o'clock. We will have some refreshments tomorrow. I think by 8:30 we'll have refreshments available, but yes,
and lots of coffee.
We even apparently our old Keurig kicked the bucket, and we've got a new one that will hopefully be much more efficient tomorrow. So that's good.
All right. What's that?
What kicked the bucket?
The Keurig machine.
The old coffee machine.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, this new one.
Did that one? You tested it out? Did it work better?
I had to figure out, Pamela, I think, had to show me how to use it. I still grind coffee and pour it through a filter.
Very good. Well, we will not close this evening. We'll actually adjourn and
recess.
We'll recess. I'm sorry.
Recess.
Yeah, we're not adjourning. We'll recess until tomorrow, and see everybody back bright and early tomorrow morning. So thank you all for your time.
Sounds good.
All right.